The Business of Art, brought to you by the Video Department. All right, here we go. Welcome to The Business of Art. I'm your host, Matt Polson. I'm here with Jim Ivins.
Ivins.
I'm going to start that over so I get it right.
Don't worry, everybody gets it wrong.
You know what? We're just going to keep it going because actually the theme of this podcast, in a way, is getting to know each other.
Yeah, right?
Because we were connected through our episode 1 guest, Allie Foley-Schenk.
The best.
How do you know Allie?
Short answer, we've only gotten to know each other pretty recently. So, like, I lived in Nashville for 6 years. I'm born and raised here in Richmond, but I moved back here in 2022 and then started my band, The Fan, last year, and just was kind of like, you know, doing the thing where I'm starting from ground zero again, and I'm just like checking out what bands are around and everything. And Allie was like one of the first people who like took an interest in what we were doing, and, you know, was always like responding to everything, commenting on things. I was like, oh, she's so nice. And then we got the chance to play with Weekender, the Camel, back in December.
Okay,
and it was a blast.
Nice. That's I filmed there recently. I filmed Hurricane Party, the Hurricane Party. Do you know those guys?
No, I don't think so.
That was somebody that Allie connected me with as well. The Camel was a great space.
Oh, it's the best.
Yeah. Were you? So where did you live before 2022? Did I miss that?
Yeah. So I lived in Nashville.
Nashville
for 6 years.
Okay. Were you doing the music thing down there?
I was.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm jumping all over the place here, but what is the style of your band, The Fan?
I describe The Fan as nostalgia rock.
Yeah, I love it.
Basically, like,
I'm here for it.
I like to say it's like if they made a sequel to Empire Records during the MySpace era, like that's what we would sound like.
Great, but it's originals.
Yep, all originals.
Nice.
But, you know, just like very much in that late '90s, early 2000s pop rock kind of thing. So, you know,
I love it, man.
Third Eye Blind, Gin Blossoms, Goo Goo Dolls, that kind of stuff. You know,
I love it.
All the feel good music.
Yeah, you have your vibe is. What do people say your vibe is?
It's nostalgic.
Is there a specific like lead? Are you lead singer of your band?
Yes.
Is there a specific lead singer vibe that you get? I have one in mind.
I would love to know what yours is.
The lead singer of the Offspring.
But it's a hair, isn't
Which
it?
I feel like is totally, but then I feel like that's totally on point. Like
I have gotten Dexter Holland many times before because I like doing the spiky hair, man.
It's great. I
fought for it in the mid 2000s, man. I'm sticking with it. You know, I'm not gonna let Gen Zers tell me that the millennial trends are over. Yeah.
No, the young folks, I think their whole thing is like, we don't style our hair. That's like,
yes, definitely.
That's like the vibe that they're going for, I think.
And they're also like, no, we're not doing skinny jeans anymore. I'm like, I fought for skinny jeans. Like I'm riding that one till the wheels come off.
Yeah, exactly. Just as a lot of us are getting used to them. Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I love the idea of nostalgia rock because I think that is. And I think the more that we get integrated with technology, nostalgia is a huge part of art.
Absolutely.
And especially, for lack of a better word, the commercialization of art. And really all that I mean from that is artists making money off of their art.
Yeah.
And it's something that, you know, especially somebody who has a background in the theater arts, I have seen the transition kind of go from being very much about nostalgia to, let's just say, it has now become a little bit more politically oriented.
Sure.
And I think that it has suffered because of that.
Yeah.
As an industry as a whole. So I think that, what has your experience been like? I mean, Nashville is in, I would guess, a lot of ways the sort of Hollywood of the music industry.
It certainly can feel that way.
Yeah. What was your experience like down there?
You know, it's interesting because, you know, Nashville is such like the it city right now,
Right.
And everyone's very excited about it, and everyone loves going there. And so there's a part of me that doesn't want to just be a grumpy like old guy and just like shit all over like everyone's perceptions of like what it might be or whatever.
Yeah. But part of you wants to.
Yeah, I do.
Do you feel comfortable telling how old you are?
I'm 35.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're a young man.
Oh, thank you very much. You know, did I say 35? I meant 25. No, so here's what I'll say. Okay. Nashville is very unique in that, like you said, I mean, it is the center of the universe right now, and so many people are moving there, and so many already established, like, successful artists are moving there now.
Yeah.
And so much of what culture there is entrenched in the music industry, and sidemen and songwriters and session musicians, and and making music, and all of that is great. And right now, I think this is probably a national thing, but I know that in Nashville, especially given that it's such a music hub, a big thing there is tribute shows. And so that could be, you pick an era, you pick a style, you pick a particular band,
Right.
and you get like 100 musicians, and you put them in a pod, you mix it up, and you assign people songs, and you just show up, and you just kind of need to know your shit. And that's also, I can curse on this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Just want to make sure,
Yeah.
because I tend to do that. And it's kind of an understood thing that you just have to show up and know your stuff. And I will say, as a musician, I mean, I've been a musician for my entire life, and I've been playing in the club since I was 15. And I moved to Nashville when I was 27. Yeah, I moved when I was 27. And I will say, getting into that kind of a mindset and those types of shows was an incredible education as a musician, because you can think that you're good.
Right.
One, when you start going around in Nashville and you see the best of the best playing, whether that's on stage or whether it's down on Broadway or whatever, one, that's already humbling enough, where you're like, I remember the first time I went on Broadway and I saw just like these old school guitar players just like absolutely shredding, just like it was nothing.
Yeah.
And I look at that, I'm just like, I'm not a guitar player. Like that's completely absurd. I could never do that.
Right.
But second, when you start doing these tribute shows, it's a very interesting, because you find yourself being like, well, I don't want to be the guy who showed up unprepared, and if as you start doing more of them, more of these guys that are moving to Nashville that are already established, what you find out between them and the sidemen, people just want to jam. Yeah. So like you'll start doing tribute shows, and the first one that me and my brother we moved there at the same time. The first one that we ever did was this one called Rare Hair, and it's all like mostly like 80s like metal, and you'll find yourself being like, oh, I'm on a song with the bass player from Bon Jovi,
right.
Or I'm on the song with the guitar player from Skid Row, or the singer of Faster Pussycat or whatever, and you're like, these are like big people, and you're like, well, I don't want to screw up in front of this person, so it really teaches you like, don't be that guy, because people remember. And for as big as Nashville is, the music community is so small.
Sure.
And you can get to know each other really quickly. And if you fuck up at one of these tribute shows, people don't forget. And that's whether you show up unprepared, you act unprofessional, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you don't show up when you're supposed to show up. So doing those tribute shows, which have become, unfortunately, extremely oversaturated in Nashville, but doing those tribute shows, I definitely, if you're going to move to Nashville, I recommend getting into that.
Hell
because, again, it's really going to show you, like, all right, do you got what it takes? So, like, you better learn that.
So what do you do? So you say, like, obviously you take the opportunity seriously, and you got to come prepared. What do you do to prepare for an opportunity like that?
Everyone is different. For me, I'm always just repetition. Yeah. I gotta play, because the good thing is, a lot of times when you do these tribute shows, you're only playing one, maybe two songs.
Sure.
So as long as you can kind of just like lock in on those, I mean, just keep doing it over and over. I mean, the thing that was always most fun for me was when I did something completely out of my comfort zone. Like one of those tribute nights was a thrash metal night, and I played a song by a band called Helloween. I don't know if people know who they are, but
shout out Helloween.
They're super fast, like thrashy stuff, and you're going like, and I'm just like, that is not my, like, I love listening to that kind of music, but like I am not that guitar player like at all, but I just wanted to see if I could do it. And like, yeah, it was nerve wracking. Doing that. And I remember one night, the theme of the tribute night was Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtrack.
Oh, wow.
So
that could be anything. That could be like hip hop. That could be
yes.
like, yeah.
So we did, God, what songs did we do? I know we did the Ernie's, Here and Now. If you know that game soundtrack, you know it if you heard it. We did that. We did an AFI song called "The Boy Who Destroyed the World." We did. We did an Avail song. Richmond, shout out.
Yeah, I love that.
And then we did Guerrilla Radio, Rage Against the Machine.
Okay.
So I had to rap.
Okay.
And it's just like, I love listening to that, but like I am not a rapper.
Yeah.
So it was like interesting to like get into that. So especially when you're learning stuff like that, you gotta just eat, sleep, and breathe those songs.
Right.
Especially because when you're doing the tribute shows, like it seems intuitive, but you really do need to remember, like, these are songs people actually care about.
Right,
so if people are coming to these shows, like, they know these songs and they want to hear them exactly how they remember them.
Right, exactly.
So you gotta just like check your artist hat at the door and be like, no, you are doing it exactly the way that it is on the recording,
right.
And you need to know all those words. You need to know all the lines at the solo.
There's a place for creative interpretations for those kinds of songs.
Yes,
but the word tribute in its essence is like, don't do that.
Yes, that is right.
I have ambitions of doing a Billy Joel tribute show where the first act is the entire album of it's the one with Uptown Girl and
is that songs from an Italian restaurant.
It's not songs from Italian restaurant. I think it's like the one after that.
Okay,
but it's got like so many hits on it.
Yeah.
And then the second act would be just like other Billy Joel songs, and the second act would be like females singing the songs, et cetera, et cetera.
Nice.
But the first act would be tribute. Like, we're going to try and make this sound as much like and what is that band, that Richmond band that does the they're the not orchestra, wind band.
Wind band.
I mean, they're not the wind band, but they're trombones, and it's like
No BS Brass.
Yes, No BS Brass. Like, try and get No BS Brass because it's like all like horns.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Oh man, yeah, I would love to do that, but it's trying to find like the right like fundraiser kind of opportunity.
Yeah,
for
totally.
It, like, find the right cause. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you went to Nashville, did you have like a specific kind of goal in mind in terms of career, like in terms of your?
It's interesting. So my aspirations or not even aspirations, but like kind of like my plan for what I thought I would do changed pretty quickly. So I moved there when I was 27. I'm going to compact the 12 years before that into as quick as I can.
Yeah.
But like basically,
we got 45 minutes.
Yeah, I was a band. I've been in bands, playing in the club since I was 15. Like I said. After playing in Richmond for years, I moved to New York City. We were briefly repped by 21 Pilots' lawyer at one point. We were repped by the former head of A&R at Sony. He was our manager for a couple of years. We ended up getting managed by another guy who coincidentally managed Lamb of God and Conditions in addition to Kiss.
This is all in New York?
Yeah. So, the third person I just mentioned was... I moved back to Richmond briefly for 2 years after I lived in New York because the first manager was like, okay, you guys are about to be the biggest band in the world. You're about to get a record deal, and let's move you back to Virginia because, it'll look way more interesting if you break out of Virginia because it's like very rare that, people have like huge success out of Virginia. So I'm like, great. So once we moved back to Virginia, he brought in a second manager. And this guy had managed Kiss and Breaking Benjamin and Newfound Glory, but he also had managed Lamb of God and Conditions. And so we're like, okay, well, he understands Richmond. So, like, this should be the guy, right? And long story short, we got shopped again to every label in the business because we had gotten shopped with the 21 Pilots guy. And I'm here, so you know what happened. And so we went through all of that, and my brother and I were both just like, we need a reset.
He's in the band with you, your brother?
My brother was in, we had a band called the Ivins.
Gotcha.
That was the band in New York, and that was the band in Nashville. And so we were just like, we need to just Control Z this thing, and we need to reset. And the guy who became our guitar player in Nashville actually was another Richmond guy named Hatton Taylor. He went to collegiate with us. And he called me out of the blue, and like we were not like friends. Like we knew each other, but like we were not friends. And he called me and was like, "Hey man, so I just got out of grad school, and I think I'm gonna move to Nashville. You want to come with me?" I had pretty much never been to Nashville before. I had been for a wedding once, like 2 years prior, so like I don't really count that. I'd never been to Nashville. I knew nothing about it. I had no idea that it was becoming like an it city and 100 people a day were moving there. I had no job. Barely knew this guy. We took an apartment sight unseen, and we just went and figured it out. And when I got there, my thinking was, okay, I'm gonna make this band happen, and while that's going on, I'm gonna get into like pop and country like co-writing. And I'm going to go to writers' rounds all the time. And I'm going to like get ingrained into like that community. And then I'm going to also be like a session guy. And then I'll also have this band. So I'll just be like the triple threat. And, it's going to be great. And very quickly, I realized that's not going to happen. Just for me personally, I started going to writers' rounds. And I quickly realized that as a guy who grew up, coming from what I'll call the Warped Tour community.
Yeah.
Idolizing really like, honest, impassioned singer-songwriters like Ace Anderson from the Early November and Chris Carrabba from Dashboard Confessional and, bands like, Brand New and Census Fail and everything. And, my kind of like, I don't know what kind of word I want to use here, but it's just basically my brand of singer-songwriter really did not mesh well with everyone in Nashville's brand of singer-songwriter. And I quickly began to realize that, if you have to kind of be able to, this is going to sound really snobby. I'm not really meaning for it to sound this way, but it's like, you got to be able to write some really like trite, fluffy, silly, pop stuff if you really want to get into that community. And I just realized that's just not for me.
Sure.
I remember I wrote like 2 or 3 songs. I was like, all right, this could be something. But I was like, I felt gross about it almost. Like, not that I'm above that at all, but just like, personal taste,
right,
and everything. Yeah. Like, I was just like, I just don't think I can fake this. Mm-hmm. And I quickly realized, no, you can't. Like, if you're going to do that, you can't fake it. You have to be 100% all in.
Not to be great. If you want to be great at it, you can't be faking
exactly.
it.
But like, I'm going to writers' rounds and I'm hearing people rhyme margaritas and senoritas and
I'm going to write that down. That's good.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember I went one night, went to a round. There were 5 writers. I think each person played 3, maybe 4 songs. It was like a really long round. And I counted a whiskey reference in every other song. And I was just like, I can't do this. Like, this isn't going to work. And then I also quickly realized, yeah, I'd love to be a session guy. I don't have the chops. This is Nashville. Like, there's no fucking way I'm going to...
On guitar, you mean?
On guitar. Yeah. Like, I mean, because that's my primary instrument. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I play bass as well. And, I play some drums as well. But I was just like... If I had to pick a lane for that, it was going to be guitar. And I'm just like, I'm just not that guy. Like, I'd love it if I was, but I'm just not. So I was like, well, then I just got to make this band happen. And
is this the Ivins?
This is the Ivins.
Mm-hmm.
And
does your brother move with you?
Yeah, so he still lives in Nashville. He's a professional drummer.
Gotcha. Did he move down at that time, or was he already there?
I beat him there by 6 months.
Okay.
But yeah, so we had our band, and then his aspiration was, I'm going to be a sideman. We're going to make this band happen, but I'm going to be a sideman. And so he has had, he's had a decent amount of success with that. So he's drummed with Tanya Tucker, legendary country artist. I know nothing about country music, so I had to learn that.
Yeah.
He's played with David Cook, who won American Idol.
Yeah.
He played with this band When in Rome. They had this hit in the 80s called The Promise.
Mm-hmm.
That was at the end of Napoleon Dynamite. That's like the reference that a lot of people get. And he'll be out with Reliant K this summer.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
I know Reliant
he's
K.
Yeah, so he's in Nashville making it happen. But for me, I was just like, I got to make people know our band. And so that ended up being my primary goal.
Nice. My big claim to fame is I did a play with Konstantin Maroulis, also of American Idol
yes,
fame.
I remember that name.
Yeah. So you gave it 6 years, though. I mean, that's an honest try.
I did. It's very interesting. People in Nashville, I've heard the number move a little bit, but like I've heard people say Nashville's a 5-year town. I've heard people say Nashville's a 6-year town. I've heard people say Nashville's a 7-year town, and I've heard people say Nashville's a 10-year town. The number I heard most consistently was 6. And I will admit the pandemic kind of cracked me.
It cracked all of us.
It cracked all of us. But yeah, for me, we were already, things weren't going the way I wanted them to go. And then right as I'll say, so my brother and I started our own tribute night called Grunge Night, which is exactly what it sounds like. So it's all, 90s alternative rock. And we have built it up into a pretty big deal over the last couple of years. We just had our 10th in January, and we've started to like have a lot of like bigger people like coming to us and asking and saying that they want to do the show. So like we've had like some big, like the biggest names we've had do it. Like we had Chris Daughtry, he's done it a couple times. We had Lizzie, Joe, and RJ from Hailstorm. They did it, and then we had David Cook do it, and then we've had people from Goo Goo Dolls, Tonic, Yellow Card, Bad Flower, Highly Suspect. I mean, just like all these, guys who all just live in Nashville and just want to jam. And so we started kind of building the show into something big. And right as we were like, people are just starting to figure out who we are, like the pandemic happened. And during the pandemic, I made this album called Quarantunes, which is when like I wrote. Also, funny enough, at the time, I thought I coined that term, and I thought I was so creative. Yeah. And then I like went online, like a couple months in the pandemic, and there was like 15 other people who had done that. I was like, damn, I thought I had.
That's the way it always is.
Yeah, and so like I figured like, all right, this entire city is home right now. Like, I mean, live music and everybody's home right now, so nobody knows what to do. And I was like, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll kind of take the tribute show idea and put it on a record. So I would demo a bunch of songs, and I was like, well, here's what I'll do. I'll send each song to a drummer, a bass player, a lead guitar player, and a vocalist, and have them write whatever they want over it. So I got like 60 people on this album, and it was guys from Florida Georgia Line and Three Doors Down and Daughtry and CKY and Tonic and like all these really cool people on this album. And I never worked harder on anything in my life. I was never been more proud of anything in my entire life. And I was like, this sounds like a story that I think people in Nashville might be interested in. It's I was going to do it for the Music Cares COVID Relief Fund, and I was bringing in all these musicians who were home, and we're all going to be on this record, and rah rah rah, everything's great. And it just landed with an absolute thud. And like nobody cared. I couldn't get anyone to talk about it. I couldn't get anyone to write about it. Nobody listened to it. And it was just I've been a musician. I've been hearing no my entire life. So like it's fine. But like this one, man, like it was like the world is already shit right now. And then for this album that I just, I brought in so many other talented people and I put so much of myself into it. And for that album to flop the way it did, like that was the first like major crack that I'd ever experienced personally. And then the Ivins put out a record that we'd been working on for like 3 or 4 years. Same thing happened. And, like everyone, I kind of lost my mind during the pandemic as well. So I was like dealing with a bunch of mental health problems, like, and like my creative life is just getting, butchered like before my eyes. I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. And my girlfriend, who's now my wife, she had never really wanted to stay in Nashville, but to her credit, she was just like, well, I know you want to like, make something happen. So I'll just wait around. And whenever you feel like you can't do this anymore, we'll move. And so I moved here in 2022. I swore off ever doing anything with music ever again. And I made it a whole 9 months before the Ivins got asked by the U.S. State Department to go be the first American artist to ever play in Sudan.
Okay.
So we did that.
That's so random.
Yes, it is random. It was pretty wild.
Why did they ask you guys?
So my brother plays in another band. They're based out of D.C. They're called Burn the Ballroom. They're an incredible band. In 2015, they got wind that the State Department has a series of programs where basically they take American artists and they send them to countries where either like America doesn't poll well, or like they just don't have access to a lot of Western culture. And they send them there as a way to kind of just be like, hey, America's pretty cool. Art, right? You know? And they'd never sent a rock band before. They had always, I mean, this program goes all the way back to like Dizzy Gillespie was like the first artist who did this. The program is called American Music Abroad, the one that they did and the one that we did. But they'd never sent a rock band, decades of the program. So they decided to get their feet wet. And so Burn the Ballroom went to Tunisia, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. And were there for like a month. They did a bunch of touring. It was crazy. The next year, they got sent to, with a different State Department program, to Vladivostok, Russia, where they headlined a festival for 10,000 people because they're like, holy shit, an American band is coming here. I got to see this. And then they went to Tajikistan. So during all of this time, we as the Ivins were also applying to like get into the program, and we kept not getting in, which is kind of funny because my brother, after a couple years, he was like asking his people at the State Department. He's like, okay, I got to know, like, what's going on with the Ivins? Like, how come we are never getting in? And he would find out after a while that there'd be like, let's say there were like 3 people scoring us or something. We'd get like a 10, a 9, and a 0. And it would always be like one person tanking us each year. And finally, so, you know, I leave Nashville. I swear off music. I'm like, I'm never doing anything. Like, I broke up the band when I left, and I was like, I'm never doing anything with music again. And then the fall of 2022, my brother calls me, and he's like, hey, the State Department, we got into the program, and they want to send us to Sudan. And I was like, no, absolutely, I'm not doing that. And he's like, oh, what? Come on, we got to do it. Like, it's going to be crazy. No American rock band has ever been there. We'll be the first. And so it took a little bit of convincing, but eventually I relented, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. So, you know, we kind of restart the band again briefly. We go into the studio, we record a couple new songs, we put one of them out, and we decide we're going to go do this trip. And we spend 10 days in Sudan, and then we go and spend 5 days in Egypt. First night in Sudan, we drove 9 hours through the desert, and got to a train station where there were 2,000 people waiting for us. And we opened for a comedian and a jazz artist. And that kind of like defined the whole experience. It was just like, nobody knew what the hell they were looking at. Neither did we, but we're just, you know, united, through music. And
playing your own music, originals.
Yep. It was very funny. We asked them, we're like, hey, do we need to learn like any cover songs? And eventually the State Department sends us this list, like, I'm talking like 10 days before we go. And it's all like Bruce Springsteen and Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder. And it's just like, why are all these songs like 40 years old, you know? Yeah. So we learned Hotel California.
Sure.
And we made a rock version of Superstition by Stevie Wonder. And then, so we got this list, and so we're like, okay, so like, what kind of music is popular in Sudan? And they go, reggae. And we're like, all right, well, we're not reggae. What else is popular? And they're like, rap. And we're like, all right, we're definitely not that. So then we decided, well, 311 is kind of reggae, and it has kind of a hip-hop energy, but they're a rock band, and so maybe we'll learn a 311 song too. And so we learned Beautiful Disaster by 311 and brought that over there. So yes, I mean, we were in Sudan for 10 days. It was wild, and made even wilder by the fact that 3 weeks after we left, a civil war broke out. It still is going on right now.
3 weeks after you came home?
Yes.
Wow. Right. Yeah.
And we knew that there was something boiling up because in, like, forgive me if I get this wrong, I believe in 2018 there had been a revolution and then a counter-revolution in 2019, and there were these two warring factions in the Sudanese military that were kind of vying for control of the country. And when we were there, again, things just felt very tense. Nothing ever, we were never in any danger. Nothing ever happened to us. But I do remember one night we were having dinner on the Nile, and I hear this giant boom. And I'm like, I look at our guy and I'm like, what the hell was that? And he's like, oh, those are the tear gas bombs. And I'm like, the tear gas what now? And he's like, oh yeah, well, every day for the last 6 or 9 months, there's been planned protests, because we're in the capital city of Khartoum, and that's pretty much where we were just about the entire time we were there. And he was like, there's planned protests every day, and they're always broken up by tear gas bombs. And, the military, gets involved and, gets people out of there. And I'm like, well, is that anywhere near us right now? He's like, no, I don't think so. Like, we'll probably be fine. And so just like that was just kind of the energy while we were there. And so 3 weeks after we leave, Civil War.
Can I ask you a tough question?
Yes.
Did the Ivins playing in Sudan, was that the triggering event for the actual Civil War?
That is what everyone's reaction is. Every time I tell them the story, they're like, way to go, Jim. Like, you started a civil war in Africa.
We knew rock and roll had an effect on people. It's like Footloose. It's like, no dancing.
Just couldn't handle it. It was, it's pretty wild. But, I mean, the shows were crazy. I mean, I will say, we got like mobbed coming off stage like we were the Beatles.
Yeah.
And people were just like, we took pictures for like hours after we got off stage. Like, it was very bizarre.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, it was cool because it was just like, okay, we know that this is a very isolated experience and we're never going to have this again. But like, oh, so this is what it's like to be one of those famous bands. Right. You know what I mean? So it was pretty gnarly, I guess.
That doesn't happen after the Camel?
No, definitely not. It's just mostly just like, oh, you want a cigarette?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, yeah, you want to vape? You want to hit the vape?
Yeah.
So what were you doing and are doing now to earn a living during this time? It's Nashville and to this day.
I have done a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
For the last 3 years. So I was a PR major at VCU, and I always wanted to be able to have an income writing. And over the years, I always had... Not always, but like there was always something I was doing on the side to try and sharpen my writing skills, whether that was paid or unpaid, or whether I started my own blog for a long time.
What was that called? It
was called Jive Rights.
Okay.
People call me Jive or Jivins or whatever. So
gotcha,
like,
sure, yeah.
Jive Rights. And for the last 3 years, I have been writing hospital websites for HCA, Hospital Corporation of America.
Okay.
And so like if you had to go to Retreat Hospital and you wanted to know about their, emergency room, I wrote that webpage.
Yeah.
And all the other ones,
Have you talked to Allie about that at all?
I have, actually.
Yeah, because you guys have similar jobs.
Yeah, because she's kind of like a freelancer in that world, and
Right.
I'm, working for the man.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that for 3 years. I got the job when I was in Nashville.
Oh, okay.
Because what people say about Nashville, the cliche is you go for music and leave in healthcare.
Okay.
Because those are the two industries that keep that city afloat. And so HCA's headquarters are in Nashville. I got hired there as a remote employee, and I got to keep my job when I moved.
Nice.
So that's been very, very nice. Before then, when I got my first job out of college, when I moved to New York City, I worked for Barclays, booking conference rooms for investment bankers. Barclays, if you don't know, is the giant British bank that bought Lehman Brothers during the financial crisis. So
okay.
it's like,
I just know the Barclays Center. Like
yes.
That was what I was thinking.
So that is what it is.
Yeah.
Same company. But I mean, like, it's like the most like corporate of corporate environments. And I was a 23-year-old degenerate who's getting hammered 4 or 5 nights a week because I'm 23 in New York City.
Right.
I have to wear not just a suit, I have to wear the same suit to work every day. Like the same vaguely pinstriped suit, white shirt with a Barclays approved tie. They gave me three versions of the same tie. And it was like, if you didn't wear that, they might do this. One day, I think I'd like spilled something on like one of the suits or whatever. So I had a suit that was the exact same color, just didn't have the light pinstripe. So I wore it. I'm sitting at the desk because this is during a time where I was doing lobby concierge before I was, booking conference rooms. I would, people would walk into the building and be like, oh, welcome to Barclays. Can I see your ID? And I'd, swipe people in and everything. And my boss comes down. I think he was going out for lunch or something like that. He like stops in his tracks and like doubles back and comes over to the desk. He's like, hey, Jim, what's going on with that suit? I was like, "Oh man, I'm sorry. I think I spilled something on the pinstripe one. I'll have it ready tomorrow." He's like, "Well, that's not gonna work. So here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna take the pinstripe suit to this dry cleaners, and you're gonna do it on your lunch, and you're gonna go and get the suit dry clean, and you're gonna pick up another one that we already have there, and you're gonna bring that back. You're gonna change into that suit, and you're gonna wear that suit for the rest of the day." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So it's that level of corporate. Meanwhile, like I said, like I'm coming in hungover like every day of the week, and I was just like,
does that kind of thing even exist outside of New York City? Like that level?
Man,
I don't know.
I don't know, man. Like maybe I almost said San Francisco, but I'm like no, because that's where all the tech bros are. So like, there's no way.
Hoodies, PJs.
Yeah, it's probably just New York City.
New York is such an interesting place. I lived there for a year. How many years were you there?
Just 2, which is funny because when I talk about it with my friends, it feels like I lived there for 7. Yeah. But like,
what years was it?
2012 through 2014.
Okay, we just missed each other. I was 09 to 10.
Oh, where'd you live?
Astoria the whole time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, where were you?
I was in Manhattan, so I lived in Midtown at 58th and 3rd, and then Lower East Side, Orchard and Delancey.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. I always remember Astoria, my... so stupid. My friend who lived there, I was trying to get to know the subway system or whatever, one day he sang this, he's like, "If you need to go to Astoria, take the N or the Q." And I never forgot that.
That's funny.
Ever. I was like, if the R train was coming, I'm like, nope, I'm not taking that R train because it's not the N or the Q.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I loved Astoria, man. It was a great
dope.
spot.
Yeah,
great
I had some friends
places
that lived
to
there.
eat. I had some really interesting landlords in my time.
Oh, absolutely. I never met the landlord in my Lower East Side apartment.
I moved into a spot that it was a couple had just moved into there. They owned a liquor store, which was hugely advantageous to me.
Obviously.
And they refinished their basement and turned it into like a little studio apartment. And I had just gone through a bad breakup, and I was like, a basement apartment sounds like a perfect place for me to get out of my depression.
In the dark.
And so I got really into 30 Rock, and
the best.
It was like truly, yeah.
Wade Boggs' Carpet World.
That's so funny. And so I came back to Richmond one December, and when I came back to New York, I walked in, and there was standing water in my entire
There it is.
studio, and the guy was awesome.
Wasn't even Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah, no, it was like snow, and the snow had melted. Like it wasn't even anything crazy.
Yeah, because you were in the basement. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess they just, I don't know. But yeah, that place only lasted 3 months. But the guy was really nice. He came in with a shop vac and towels and like helped me clean it up and stuff.
That's
like
way
that.
nicer than most people I know. New York landlords.
100%. I mean, it was one of the situations where literally like in the apartment was the door that goes into.
Yeah.
So we could like hear each other, it was
exactly.
not ideal, but that's New York, man.
Yeah. No, it was New York was an incredible experience.
Yeah. Makes you tough.
It makes you tough. And I was going to say everything that people say about it, like why it's bad is 100% true.
Sure.
But it just comes down to like, can you tolerate it?
Yeah.
And some people can and some people can't. And so I'm just like, I liked it.
Yeah.
But again, I was a 23-year-old.
Right.
Like, I could never move back now.
No.
Especially because now, I mean, God, I've been gone for 10 years. And, like, it was already expensive as hell. But, like, now, I mean, God, it's ridiculous.
Great place to visit. No desire to live there.
Yes. That's kind of how I feel about Nashville now.
Yeah.
I tell people, I'm like, go for a 3-day weekend. You will have the time of your life. You will have such a blast. Don't move there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been, so it's definitely
go for a 3-day weekend.
Yeah.
Promise you'll have a great time.
We just had a weekend in DC, which is one of my favorite cities in the world. Really, I love DC. It's so beautiful. The architecture there is just every time you're walking down the street, it's like, why do they not make buildings like this anymore?
I know
it's insane to me.
It's wild.
So where do you live now in Richmond?
I live in Church Hill.
That's right, Churchill.
Which was funny
31st.
because we were when we were considering. So what's very interesting is that moving back to Richmond was actually not my idea. It was actually my wife's idea.
Okay, not from here.
She is not from here. She's from rural Michigan. And
that wasn't an option.
No, I told her I'm never doing that. But two, she had no interest in doing that.
Good.
She had always wanted to live on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And I will say one other thing about living in Tennessee. having being from Virginia and then having lived in New York, I had never lived in a landlocked state before, and neither had she. And I did not realize how much that affects you if you like water like I do. And it was 8 hours from the nearest beach. And
what beach was that? Like,
it would have been like 30A, like Destin, Florida.
Okay.
Kind of like Destin, Pensacola, Panama City, that kind of area. And we had 2 big lakes in Nashville, which are very fun to go to. But people from there are like, "Oh, you got the lakes. It's the same thing." And you're like, "No, it is not. It's not the same at all."
It's not even the same as a river. Like a lake is completely different.
Yeah. So she also had always wanted to live on the East Coast, and so like, it's funny. What would always happen was we'd like go on some trip. Like I remember one time we went to Charleston, and we just like fell in love with the city. And like one day we're like, "Oh my God, could we like move here at some point?" And then it rained, and the entire city flooded in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's just that's just like a thing that happens. And we're like, yeah, it's never going to happen. We're never moving here.
Yeah.
And so her first choice was like, let's move to Richmond. And we never considered anywhere else. So we were looking at places, and this house came on the market in Church Hill. And I, being from here, growing up here, going to VCU, I had never like had any reason to go to Church Hill.
No.
Like a buddy of mine co-owns Patrick Henry, and I'd eaten at the Hill Cafe one time.
Yeah.
And that was all I knew about Church Hill. So we ended up getting this house that we never thought we would get. And she's like, "So, like, is this going to be cool?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." Like,
And this was 2020?
no, this is
2022.
This is March of 2022.
Right.
So I'm like, I have no idea if this is going to work. Like, maybe it will. Maybe we'll like it. Or maybe this is going to be terrible. Like, I mean, because again, I just have the mindset of like, I grew up here. Like, Church Hill, like, it's kind of rough, right? But I kind of like when I moved to Nashville, I did not realize that Church Hill has been having this like renaissance right now. And it's amazing.
It's incredible.
I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved every second of it.
3 of the top 5 restaurants in Richmond are in Churchill, pretty much.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And I'm now like, I mean, we made friends with like everyone in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we like we pretty much will find any reason to not leave Church Hill.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like, it's perfect.
Yeah. Well, when it snows, you can't. So
Yeah, exactly. So it works out just fine.
The like huge, the last big snow that we had was when I was living in Churchill. And thank God Union Market was open.
Love it.
Yeah. And like I was close enough, obviously, that I could walk there and stuff like that. And I was just like, man, I don't know what I would do if this hadn't played out the way that it did. But,
right.
Churchill's great. My only complaint about Churchill is that there's only like 2 ways in and out, basically, from most parts of the city.
Yes. And when you're like, when you have to all come together to get on that ramp, like by MCV to like get on the highway, it adds like 7 minutes to like whatever trip you're going on. So like if I have to go somewhere and it takes 13 minutes to get there, it really takes like 7, but like that one bottleneck just like adds a bunch of time to it.
That's great. So you guys bought?
Yes.
Nice. Good for you.
Literally the week before the interest rate hikes.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Yeah. So we were very, very lucky. We were very blessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So you mentioned that when you moved back from Nashville, you had given up on music.
Yes, that's right.
So where do you stand with music now?
I'm back, man. I'm a lifer.
Back, baby.
Look, it's one of these things where I've had this realization before. But really, I mean, when we got the Sudan offer, I was just like, who am I kidding? Like, come on. Like, yeah, so, I mean, quick background. My cousin, his name is Bill Leverty. He plays in a band called Firehouse. Firehouse were like the last, he hates this term, so I'm sorry. They're like the last big, like, hair band that got big, like Motley Crue, Poison, Warrant, Rat, like those kinds of bands. They were the last really big one that came in before, Seattle kind of changed the landscape of rock music. And so their first album came out in 1990. They snuck in under the wire. They sold 8 million records. They're all over MTV and radio. They won an American Music Award. And like,
would I know any of their songs?
Probably not. I'm going to throw a few at you. Basically, so I'm 35. Like, I feel like if you're 40, you probably will.
I turned 40 this year.
Okay. Do you know there's a song called Don't Treat Me Bad? Love of a Lifetime.
Give me a little.
When I Look Into Your Eyes, All She Wrote.
Can you give me a little?
baby, don't treat me bad. This could be the best thing that I don't know.
No.
And then there's finally
nice.
found the love of a lifetime. Yeah, whatever. It's fine.
I hope we don't get with any copyright shit with that.
That's all right. You can cut that. Again, it's like if you're not clued into like that scene, you probably are not thinking about it. But anyway, just like seeing him, explode like they did when I was a kid, especially, they're guys from Richmond. I mean, like, let's be honest, like there really aren't a lot of bands that have had mainstream success from Richmond. Like it's like one hand, like maybe
Carbon Leaf.
Yeah, but even then, think about it. Like Carbon Leaf never had
Not
like
huge.
a huge
Who
hit.
are like the big ones from Richmond?
I mean, when you break it down, I'm really just thinking about Virginia. I mean, it's like
Virginia.
Like there's Firehouse. There is. Because the whole thing about Virginia and specifically Richmond is like there's a lot of like fringe famous.
Right.
Richmond has produced a lot of people who are like punk famous.
And people who from Virginia who went on to be in bigger bands, like Dave Grohl was born in Virginia. Yeah.
But like, so you get like Lamb of God, Avail, Strike Anywhere, Gwar, Municipal Waste. Like those are like they're punk famous, but they're like by virtue of just the style of music they play, they're never gonna be like a mainstream successful artist.
Right.
So like then you get Dave Matthews Band, obviously. There's the one,
probably. Yeah.
Then you have a bunch of like smaller bands. So you have Carbon Leaf. Then you got like Fighting Gravity.
Yes, I was hoping you would say Fighting Gravity.
You got like Pat McGee Band, and then you've got like May from Norfolk and Parachute from Charlottesville, and then you got Everything from Harrisonburg,
and like Susan Greenbaum.
and then you got 703 from Williamsburg. Like, so you have a bunch of these kind of like. They're like kind of
Jason Mraz,
but again, Mraz had to move to get big.
Yeah.
So he didn't like break out from here, but he is from here.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like Richmond is doing its thing because I feel like bands or artists that I've always felt that artists that like write songs with like traditional pop structure don't really do very well here. The artists that do well here are either in that punk metal community or kind of like quirky indie rock, kind of a garagey, lo-fi, some kind of sensibility. So the two big ones from Richmond right now are Lucy Dacus and Bad Omens. Yeah. So it's like Richmond is still doing its thing right now, but like, so Firehouse are kind of like one of the only like big band. I mean, they had top 5, top 10,
to
top
sell
20,
that many records.
They sell 8 million records. Like, there aren't a lot of people who've done it, but like, again, like long ass way of saying, I was always, my brother and I were just like, when we saw Bill, blow up with Firehouse, we're just like, this is what we are genetically predisposed to want to be musicians. Right. I mean, already our dad has been a musician since forever. Like he's been playing a band since he was in high school. He's a worship leader on the side of being a lawyer. And so we were always just like, this is what we're destined to do. And so every job that I ever took was never a career move. It was, what can I get paid to do right now while I try and make the band happen? And so I move here, I swear off music, and then the Sudan thing comes up, and I'm just like, dude, who are you kidding? Like, nobody believed you when you said you were swearing off music. You were just trying to... You couldn't even make yourself believe it, And so we do the Sudan thing. It's a little gnarly, but like, I formed the fan as a direct reaction to the Sudan trip, because the Sudan trip, was very tense. Unfortunately for my bandmates, I was not exactly the easiest person to travel with on that trip. Everyone else kind of dealt with it better than I did. But while I was there, my friend Doug Nunnally, who I guess is everybody's friend in the Richmond music scene, he, unbeknownst to me, like, put me on an email that I did not ask to be on with Reese over at Chaco Sessions Live. And was like, hey, you need to talk to this guy, Jim Ivins, because he lives in Richmond now, and his band is currently in Sudan, being the first American rock artist ever. You should have him on Chaco Sessions Live. And I'm sitting in a hotel in Khartoum, Sudan, when I get this email. I'm like, wait, who is this? Like, because I didn't know Doug was going to do this. And so while I'm in this hotel room, I'm like getting an idea of like, well, all right, well, if I got put on this email, if this works out, maybe I'll do this one show, And I'll like play some of my old stuff just to like show like these new friends I've made here in Richmond like what I've been doing like my whole life. Okay, like that could be kind of fun. So then Reese responds and she's like, well, we don't do solo artists on the show. You have to have a band. Is that going to be a problem? And I was like, that's no problem. I got this. And I send that response and I'm like, dude, I'm like 34 now. Like, I don't know anybody who still plays music in Richmond. Who am I going to get to be in this band? And so eventually I find some guys, we fill it out, and it kind of snowballs from there because it's like, well, if we're going to do this one show, we probably need to do a warm-up before we do, you know, a live webcast in your ear where, like, every flaw is going to be amplified. So, like, all right, well, we'll do another show. I'll book a show at the Camel. So I do that. It's like, well, if we're going to do 2 shows, maybe I should, like, write a new song. Like, that'd be kind of cool. Then it was, if I'm going to do a song, maybe I need to write a record. Then it was, well, if I'm going to write a record, this needs to just be a band now. So I need to come up with a band name. And The Fan was born. And I was like, I just wanted to make music that made me feel the opposite of how I was feeling in that hotel room in Sudan. You know, the Ivins, you know, I made, the Ivins was kind of what I would call, this kind of a stupid term, but like, I'd call it like arena rock, like kind of like cool progressive like arena rock with huge hooks and everything.
Yeah, like what's the British band?
I was very inspired by like Stereophonics, Arctic Monkeys, Kasabian, Oasis. They're my favorite band ever.
Sure.
And just the lyrics were always pretty dark. You know, the very, you know, there's always very like vibey soundscapes and everything. So it's all kind of very moody and dark while being very anthemic. And I was just like, I just want to make fun, happy pop rock music, that stuff that I grew up on the radio in the 90s.
Muse.
Oh, I love Muse.
Muse, that's what I was thinking when you said anthem rock.
Yeah. We at one point were going to cover Plug-in Baby, but we didn't end up doing it. But
I saw them open for U2 in Charlottesville.
I was there.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
That was a great show. Yeah. That crazy ass set that they had. Yeah,
I saw that. I saw them again in Nashville. 30 Seconds to Mars opened for them, and Muse made them look like a high school talent show. Muse was unreal.
I thought Muse kind of made U2 look a little like Muse was like
they
rocked a little harder, honestly.
Oh yeah,
I mean, that was
well. Plus, when you play Knights of Sidonia, I mean, like that just goes so hard, and like,
and I love U2, but Muse brings a different energy, I think, with their music.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So you nailed it right there with Muse. It's like that feeling was kind of like what the Ivins was about.
Feeling.
Yeah, it's a very good feeling. Very, you know, like, let's do this, let's rock, you know. And so with The Fan, I was just like, I grew up, you know, listening to Goo Goo Dolls and Third Eye Blind and, you know, Gin Blossoms and everything.
I love that stuff,
and the music I was making in Richmond before I moved to New York, I was, you know, in a band aptly named the Jim Ivins Band, and that's the kind of music I was making. So I was like, I want to get back to that youthful feeling. You know, I remember how I felt when I was first writing my own songs and playing in clubs and everything. I remember how exciting it was and how good it felt to, you know, just pick up an acoustic guitar and write, you know, right from the heart and everything. And like, I want to do the adult continuation of that. And that's what brought me to The Fan.
Nice. And so, approaching the end here, before we get into...
I mean, by the way, we can keep going, and you can cut some stuff out if you want.
Oh, yeah, no.
I'm not on any time crunch.
No, we don't do any cuts. Okay, we don't, unless it's like me cutting out my mess-ups. But
okay.
Yeah. No, this is long... Do you have any, like, are there any podcasts that you listen to and love?
Lots. Let's see. There's a couple on the Ringer podcast network that I like.
Okay.
I listen to The Big Picture and The Rewatchables. I listen to here. Actually, I'll just pull up my phone right now.
Yeah, let's
do it.
I have them
all saved on my Spotify. Let's see.
I'm just such a big podcast fan. I'm always curious.
Yeah, I listen to things like All Around the House. Right now, so The Lonely Island and Seth Meyers just started a podcast where they're going through all of Saturday Night Live's digital shorts that they did during that time there. So like that's really fun. There's a podcast called IndieCast on Uprocks. It's these two journalists named Stephen Hayden and Ian Cohen, and they're basically just these like two like snobby indie rock guys who just like talk about rock music. So love that one. The David Spade, Dana Carvey, Fly on the Wall, love that one. Let's see. I said Rewatchables, said Pod Saves America. There's a podcast called Almost Cult Classics that I really like. Krista makes a podcast. Krista makes from Less Than Jake. He brings on songwriters, and he literally has them break down their hit song like lyric by lyric, riff by riff, second by second.
Nice, I love
like
that.
A super granular breakdown of songs, and I mean those are just some of the ones. But yeah, I love podcasts. I listen to them around the house every day.
So,
what about you?
Yeah, no, I love them. I listen to one that I listen to like every episode that comes out is a news one called Breaking Points.
Nice.
And it's got like sort of a more conservative and a more liberal leaning host, and so sometimes they get into some serious conversations, and I'm like, I just love it. I love the heat, man.
Oh yeah,
I love like intense conversations. My wife is the exact opposite. She's like, I don't know how you listen to this. I'm like,
yeah,
because I listen to it while I'm running. I listen to it while I'm working out. So
see, that's interesting. I know a lot of people listen to podcasts while they're working out, and I can't do it.
Yeah.
I need to listen to like Census Fail or like Limp Bizkit or like some like hard music, either hard rock music or like electronic music.
Sure.
So like to each their own. It's very interesting. I find that people can do that.
And everyone's got a different style of working out. I take it very easy. I'm still sort of nursing a shoulder injury from 2019. And I'm so conscious about injury. So when I say working out, it's like I work out like a 75-year-old man, basically. You know what I mean? Like I'm probably lifting
a lot of water aerobics.
I'm probably a lot of sauna. I'm probably lifting slightly more weight than a 75-year-old man, but the technique's probably very similar. Lots of low and slow.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to ask you about is upcoming gigs. But before we do that, your journey's great. Your journey is, I feel like, I don't want to say it's not. I mean, look, it's not uncommon.
It is not uncommon. I like to say I'm the guy who's been at it here in Richmond the longest, who never made it. But like. I will say this. I'll cut you off just briefly.
Please.
So, like, it is not uncommon, but the one thing I am proud of, even though we did not ultimately accomplish what we set out to do, when we, every band, at least I'd like to think, every band that gets started, everyone wants the shot, and you're all kind of aiming towards getting the shot. The shot does not always guarantee, like, when you shoot a basketball, it's not always going to go in the hoop, but like it might. But if you don't get past the ball, it's not going to happen. So,
and if you don't get on the court, you're not going to get past the ball.
Yes. So when we, signed with 21 Pilots as lawyer, and then we had the guy from Sony managing us, and then we had, the other guy who managed Lamb of God managing us, like we were getting shot. We got shopped at every record label in the business more than once. And that's unfortunately a very common story, but not even getting there is even more common.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of the fact that even though I have the thing that I was always worried about was being the guy in Nashville sitting at the bar, into his 50s. It was like, one time in my 20s, I had the shot, But now I can kind of look back on it and be like, I'm proud of the fact that we got to a point where even one person who had made a good living in the music industry did say to me one time, I think you could be the biggest band in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that is not nothing.
I defy any creative to hear that from somebody who actually has done something in the music business and not get a little messed up by it.
Well, so I want to ask you several questions about this, but like, what lessons did you learn from that you can pass on to the listener from the pursuit of the shot?
Here, I've said this before, and I will say this to anyone I talk to, and this is what I learned living in Nashville. You just need to be around. Like, you need to go out and meet people. You need to go out and go to shows. You need to go just anytime there's anything going on, just go. You have to go to as many things as possible and just be around, because after a while, what you might notice is that you're going to start to see some of the same people at different events, and eventually you might say hi. They might say hi. You might strike up. You might follow each other on Instagram, and before you know it, someone might ask you to do a gig. Someone might ask you to guest on an album. Somebody might you never know what's going to happen, but nothing's ever going to happen if you're not there.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that I knew in Nashville, and at times I was guilty of this. Now, my brother, on the other hand, he is the greatest networker of all time. He is the king of I am everywhere. There are so many people who, complained that they weren't, well, how come nobody, is, listening to my band? My Spotify numbers suck. And, how come, no one's asking me to play shows? And how come, I'm not getting the good songs on the tribute shows or whatever? It's like, okay, well, do you talk to any of the people who are in charge of the tribute shows? Do you go to people's do you go check out other people's bands? And the answer is always, well, no, but, I don't know. I sent him a DM one time, and it's like, That's not going to cut it, So the only way, and this is something that I continue to work on myself. I am not an expert at it right now, but I've been trying to get better at it. You just got to be there. You just got to go out, go to as many shows as possible, meet as many people as you can, meet as many wonderful people who can bring you on their podcast as you possibly can, and just be around.
And you have said what I refer to as the dirty word, which is networking, which I think that word has such a negative connotation to it. But ultimately what you're talking about is just socializing.
Yes.
And granted, that is very hard. I'm one of those people, I think I'm an introverted extrovert or extroverted introvert, whatever it is, you know what I mean? So I can pretend, I can put it on, but I'm in pain, you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
It drains me to be social.
Yes. And a lot of musicians, by definition, it's baked into your DNA. If you're a musician, you suck at socializing. So it's a lot of shaking the cobwebs off and just try. That's why I said just go to the show. Just go to a couple shows and don't even worry about talking to anybody.
Right.
Just go and maybe shoot a video for Instagram and tag the band so they knew you were there.
Right.
And if you do it enough times, maybe they'll begin to notice.
Right.
And then maybe someone might say hey to you, and then you don't have to be the first person to say hey, because nobody likes being the first person to say hey.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
So you've gotten to what sounds like a healthy place in terms of where you are in terms of what your pursuits with music are. So what sort of advice do you give to people? So let me just sort of tell you a little bit about what Allie told me, because you guys are friends and I think it's relevant. She was really pursuing being a flutist.
Yes.
And was going to go to conservatory, and she sort of had the revelation, which it sounds like maybe you're coming to now, which is I feel if I pursue this as a profession, I'm going to fall out of love with it. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's for a 17-year-old to have that foresight to me is kind of amazing. So where are you with that? And what would you say to other people who are sort of, maybe they have one foot in the professional world, they're thinking about pursuing it and they're not sure. Maybe you say to that person, if you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, don't do it.
Yes, that's what I would say.
Yeah. So
that's 100% what I would say. Music and just the arts in general is the most unforgiving industry you will ever find. Mm-hmm. And there are so many people who do not understand the level of mental anguish that you are committing yourself to doing. So I'm saying this as someone who I just said, I'm a lifer for music. I can't quit anymore. Yeah, you know what? You have to be a little mentally ill, I think, to want to do this. And I'm owning up to that. But I would say, if you think maybe I'll just dabble, don't do it. Just don't. It's not worth it. You're going to spend so much money, and you're going to spend so much emotional capital and your time and effort. And if you're not doing it because you love it, because you can't not do it, because you have to leave Nashville and then someone says, go to Sudan with me, and something inside you says yes. If you don't have that level of I can't quit this thing, then it's just going to break your heart. That's what I mean, man. It's just but if you genuinely love it and it's something inside of you that you just feel I'm not the same unless I'm doing this, then you know what? Pursue it to your heart's content, man.
Well, let me ask you a tough question, though.
Yeah.
How do you know whether or not you have the stuff? How do you know whether or not you're good enough? And does that matter?
Well, I mean, ultimately, it will matter depending on your expectations about what you're trying to do. But, I mean, how do you know? You got to put yourself out there. There's have you ever watched Shark Tank?
we're obsessed with sharks. I've seen every single episode.
So you have heard the Cubes say there are entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs. Yeah. So the wantrepreneurs are the people who talk a big game, but who never, start that company, never put that product out or whatever. There's so many people I know, and I know several who are like, they write a ton of songs and maybe they even record them and then they never show them to anybody and they never put them out there. And you are never going to know, or at least have any idea of what you are or what you could be, unless you are putting your music out there, putting your visual art out there, putting your short film out there, like your music videos, whatever. You just got to put stuff out there into the universe to see if it gets any kind of reaction from anybody. And that's, I think, you're never going to know. You're never going to know how deeply it can affect you unless you do that.
Yeah, and that's risk and reward. That's the basic principle.
And that's just life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's so many people now who, and I think the way our culture has created, has siloed itself, people are able to just block out any adversity and any negativity or bad thoughts or, any possible struggles.
Curate their life.
They curate their life, and I just don't think that's healthy.
No, that's not real.
It's
that's
not reality, and I just think you need to get kicked in the balls. You need to hear no. You need to hear, hey, your recording sucks. You need to go, spend some money on a studio and, do it for real. Like, you need to hear. I mean, look, I had Finn McKenty, the punk rock MBA, tell me that I need vocal lessons, and I, as a personal exercise, he said he liked my song. He did a video. He said he liked the song. But he was like, I think this is a cool song. It's super catchy, but I think the singer needs vocal lessons. Now, most people nowadays would take that video, cut around what he said, and then just post the part where he's like, yeah, this song's really cool. It sounds like it could have been on the OC, and end of video. But I decided, as a personal exercise, I'm going to keep all of this, and I'm going to put it on Instagram, and because I think that's what most people are lacking. They're just making it so they don't have to hear that kind of feedback, and you're not doing yourself any favors by not hearing that. He said that, and you know what? I started taking vocal lessons for the first time in my life.
Right.
And it's
in Richmond?
Yeah. Erin Lunsford, shout out.
Erin Lunsford.
Yeah.
Man or woman? She?
She. Yeah, she sings for a band called, oh my God, cut this part. Erin and the Wildfire.
Okay.
Yes. I'm 99% sure that's
okay.
it. Yes, it definitely is.
Yeah, that's
she's fantastic. She was a recommendation from Doug Nunnally, and I took that to heart because I'm like, you know what? I've dedicated myself. I'm still gonna be out here doing this, so might as well, try and make it better.
Okay. Erin Lunsford, if you're listening, want to have you on the pod.
You should. She's great.
That's great. And yeah, vocal lessons. The greatest singers in the world took vocal lessons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're always training vocal lessons.
Absolutely.
So, yeah,
I'm in the middle of watching the Bon Jovi documentary that just dropped on Friday. It's a 4-part docuseries, and it's about how they're telling the entire story of Bon Jovi, but the center of it is in 2022 he had some very public vocal problems, and so he's like, you see him in the middle of that tour where he's getting just spit roasted online, and he's got a bunch of holistic doctors working on his throat, he's getting injections, he's got steam, all this stuff, and then finally at the end of the tour he's like, I'm getting the surgery. And so that's at the center of it, and you're like, this guy's doing vocal lessons.
Yeah.
Fucking John Bon Jovi.
Yeah, vocal nodes.
Yeah.
I mean, how could you not, the way he sings?
Yeah. I mean, look, John Mayer had it. He had to have vocal surgery. James Hetfield from Metallica, in the middle of Some Kind of Monster,
of course.
he sings along to this operatic vocal lesson demo tape that he's been singing along to since 1992 when he realized he needed vocal lessons.
Yeah. You've given lots of nuggets of wisdom, Jim.
Thank you.
I think this is great. So what upcoming gigs does the Fan have?
The Fan, we're rocking and rolling, man. So I mean, some of these might be done by the time this airs.
Exactly.
But on the 11th, I am playing solo at the Churchill Spring Fest.
Okay.
On May 17th, that's Friday night, we're playing at the Alley. We're playing with Holdover and Miracle Time. And on May 23rd, we are playing at Garden Grove Brewing. We're playing with Soft Catch and Sterling at Garden Grove Brewing on May 23rd. And then we are playing at Imperial Lounge on June 27th.
What is Imperial Lounge?
It's brand new. I have not been. It's on like Main 3rd. I don't know. I got recommended to me by somebody else who is playing there. It's the band is Shot Clock. I know they're playing there in like a couple weeks.
Was it something before? Do you know what it was before?
I don't know what it was.
Because I lived on Main between First and Adams for like 3 years. So yeah, I'm just like,
I think it's
what
like
would it be?
I think it's like the second floor of something right now. I don't know.
That's cool. I love that there's more music spaces, man. And music is one of those things that like that's never going away. That's what's so great. Like there's always going to be live shows. Yeah. There's always going to be new venues coming out. Oh, of course.
Yeah, such a music-centric city like Richmond.
Yeah, Richmond's great. And Richmond's great for the arts in general, but some of them have a harder time than others. But I think that music is one of those ones that, regardless of what else is going on in the world, like there's always going to be music, you know. And so it's great that you took the time to come out here.
Thank you so much for having me, man. This is a
share
blast.
all of your wisdom and share all of your stories with us.
As you have found, I'm a rambler. I could do a Joe Rogan style 3-hour podcast if you wanted me to.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, what we'll do is we'll do a part 2 at some point for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely appreciate it. Jim Ivins.
Yes.
The man, the myth, the legend. Thank you, sir.
Dude, thank you very much, man. This is
appreciate
great.
it.